we find ourselves in a point where boycotting has to be a decision that is coming from every one of us. We are all passionate about being heard, raising our voices, and we all, are making as dua and spending our nights in ibadah, wanting the freedom of the Palestinian people. But what we also see is we see an unprecedented rise of online peer pressure and public shaming. On a recent WhatsApp group, a person was asked, why is it every day that more and more items are added on? And last week, we were focusing on targeted boycotting. We looked at how it might be difficult to target or to boycott all the products, but if you start small, it does make an impact. However, the reality on the ground is that boycott peer pressure is something of a reality. Now, joining me on the line is Brother Zaid Ismail, a coach, author, and activist, and we are looking at this topic in depth. Brother Zaid, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a warm welcome to Radio Islam International. Jazakallah for your time.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for having me again on your show.
Alhamdulillah. So we obviously, I'm sure you are feeling the emotion, you're feeling the struggle of our brothers and sisters out there. But why do you think, as human beings, we have this nature to respond from a place of emotion always?
I think emotion comes in when the experience resonates very strongly with a personal experience of ours or personal struggle of ours. And if we're not careful, our emotions then tend to drive our responses instead of being purposeful in our responses.
Mhm. So we do know that a boycott is definitely needed, right? Each one of us has taken this oath. We've taken this. I think many of us are focused on seeing how can we help in any small way. So why is it important to remind ourselves that not everybody will have that exact list? They might not be doing the same thing as you are doing, and it might be that somebody's doing a different item. And I was just chatting to somebody, Brother Zaid, and I was saying, when you see Muslim people going into Woolworths, there's sort of like a guilt attached to it. I can't go here, everybody's going to judge me on that. So when we look at the boycott, it's almost like a nafil, right? So it's a voluntary action. So how do we reframe our minds when it comes to the list and what we are taking action?
I think from my side, I prefer to look at it slightly differently in that it's more a matter of a personal conscience rather than it is a matter of obligation. And if we consider it from that perspective, we need to also understand that there's a number of reasons why we have such almost unfortunate debates and discussions about who's boycotting what and who's doing enough and who's not doing enough. And the fact that we're so focused on what someone else is doing instead of focusing on what we're doing with a conviction and purpose behind our actions, we'll probably find that we'll have a lot more cohesion, a lot more unity, and even a lot more impact if we start approaching it from that perspective. But I think there's a
SubhanAllah,
broader.
that's very good.
I think
So from your side, if you think of when it comes to people within families, right? You tend to find this sort of tit for tat. We boycott, but our cousins or nieces or nephews, whatever, they don't boycott. So this then makes it or sort of like you are supporting much more, or you care a little bit more. Do you feel that that is actually the reality, that boycotting, it equals more care and more frustration for the cause of Palestine?
I think no, I actually disagree with that. I disagree with it
Yes.
because I think each person, in their own capacity and their own awareness, they're doing what it is that they believe is most effective within the constraints that they're facing. The reason why it becomes a tit for tat is because, and this is probably going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I think it's because we have a lack of a focused kind of leadership in how to approach these matters. So every person, every layperson is left to their own to decide who to boycott, when to boycott, how much to boycott, and all of that. Now, with the list of products and businesses that are available that deserve to be boycotted, this obviously creates a massive problem because there's very practical constraints that it's going to impose on us that we don't have alternatives for. And then who decides whose constraints are more important than who else's constraints?
So how do we check ourselves then to ensure that we aren't becoming that online bully? Sometimes it's so easy to call people out, but we don't realize that we might be those exact people. And then we know, in an Islamic point of view, everything is ibtigha'a mardatillah. It's to seek that ultimate and that whole and soul pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we want to, teach people, educate people, but we want to protect our own actions, and then at the same time maintain our etiquettes as we're educating.
I think this resonates with something I posted recently that drew quite a lot of flack, which is asking the question about how many of us are the Zionists in our own homes. And similarly, when we focus on how everyone else is doing something and feeling a need to have an opinion or judgment about them, and even sharing that openly and blatantly in public platforms, we need to realize that on the one hand, we're intending to do good by supporting a very valid cause, and we do that as part of our identity and our conviction as Muslims. But at the same time, we're flouting the Sunnah in the way we go about doing it by being so judgmental and exposing people's shame and shortcomings in a public way. So we can't expect to be effective, and we can't expect to overcome oppression if we're going to, in our own way, in our personal capacity, behave like oppressors.
Mm. I think that's such an important point is that, subhanAllah, as Muslims, we come to the table with a different voice, and that is the voice of the struggle of deen that we know is going to last forever. And so, because of this, we have to bring with it our akhlaq, and we have to bring with it the character of our Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Brother Zayd, this is something I hope, inshallah, is going to be very beneficial to many of our listeners, and within our homes to make those impactful changes. And the reality is sometimes we destroy good in the manner that we go about doing that good. So, any last words for our listeners, advice on this particular, aspect?
I think, as always, as Muslims, we need to see how is it that we can make it easier for each other to be better Muslims, not spend time pointing out all the shortcomings and getting people's backs up and creating defensiveness and polarization. The ummah is fractured enough as it is. And I think there's a hadith, and I stand to be corrected, but I think there's a hadith that cautions us against speaking words of harshness or divisiveness at a time when the ummah is fractured. So, if we
Mm.
genuinely want to respond as an ummah towards the struggle of the Palestinian people or any other oppressed nations around the world, then we need to conduct ourselves as a single ummah, not conduct ourselves as if we're individual authoritarians on what is the correct and most appropriate way to respond.
SubhanAllah, that's beautiful and pertinent advice. Brother Zayd, Jazakallah khair for your time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you barakah, inshallah, and acceptance. Please keep us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.